After the pandemic, what I realized, because I was leading a school at that point in time, was the way that young people were receiving information had shifted. Social media is how some young people come to find voice, come to find themselves, come to express themselves. So how do you strike that balance between expression and protection?
Hi, thanks for joining us today. My name is Nadia, and I'm an inclusive special education major here at Syracuse University. I'm really excited to be interviewing Ronald here today.
Hi. Good to see everyone. My name is Ronald Taylor. I am a graduate of the class of 2015 from the Maxwell School here at Syracuse University and loved it so much. Stayed on for a master's from the School of Education, where I graduated in 2016 with my MS in secondary education.
All right, so just to start, for anyone that doesn't know you, can you explain who you are, what you do, and everything along?
So my life story is, it's a really good question. I am the product of a servant leadership family. My grandparents instilled a lot in my brother and my cousins and I, a commitment to serving and doing right by people. And so I came to Syracuse initially pre-med, took a few classes, and I was like, I love kids, but not all aspects of medicine. And ended up taking some education courses and getting the chance to teach on the south side of Syracuse. And that was a launching pad. It opened up my aperture to really think about how do you serve young people to make sure they have access to lives where they can thrive.
I love that so much. I feel like inclusion means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. I also know that your career has taken you to work with TikTok and their platform. With your background, how has that specific word become a non-negotiable in your everyday life?
When you're asking questions of inclusion, it's not about, trying to dismantle or make things awkward for people. It's more so about how can we make sure that every investment we make into a young person is able to actually produce their fullest potential, because our world needs it. I think what was the most sobering thing when I graduated from SU and went on to start teaching initially, when you see how some young people are given some options and then some young people are given literally silver platters and amazing options, you hear excuses like, we can't do X, Y, and Z for a young person. It's like, well, no, we do it down the block. We do it 3 blocks away, so why can't it happen here? Excellent spaces make sure that no matter who is there, no matter who's participating, can come in and just give their best. And that's been a philosophy because that's what Syracuse University did for me. But I realized pretty quickly that that inclusion question, schools can handle a piece or a fraction of it, but then you have to also ask bigger questions of the private sector, of investment, of companies that, like large tech companies, like the one that I worked for, about how do they actually instill inclusive values to make sure that all young people can thrive.
Things that you just mentioned about like private equity and then, of course, the master's degree that you're finishing right now. How does that all tie in together outside the classroom?
Yeah, so when people ask me like, okay, you're getting your 3rd master's, why? I was like, well, I love school. But beyond that, what I began to realize as I reflected over the first decade of my career, every school that I worked in, it was able to do amazing things because you had really aligned investors or fundraising that allowed certain educational options to happen, or things weren't able to happen because the right investment wasn't there.
Right.
On the investment side of the house, you don't have people that have actually spent real time in classrooms. And so it was kind of a push for myself professionally to say, all right, this is going to be a stretch. It's going to push me. It's definitely going to take me out of my wheelhouse. But when I get to that other side of being on the investment side of the table, I'm going to bring a perspective that I guarantee 99% of the room will not have. One of the things that I learned how to do really well here at Syracuse University was figure out who's not in the room and then become that person so you can make sure the decisions are stronger. Every class I took in Maxwell, every leadership role that I held, I was like, all right, there's voices missing. How do I either become that voice or get those voices in a room so we can do things better? And it's been funny seeing how it's cascaded across my career. But yeah, that's my story and I'm sticking to it.
I love that so much. And even in the different schools that I've just done, my student placements in, I've heard a lot of discussion about failure to fundraise for certain trips and why can this school do this to raise money and we can't. And I personally don't have any experience in it yet. So just hearing you even talk, it's like, wow, I really need to do some digging because I want to be that person that can be there to help and make sure that these kids have the same opportunities.
It's funny because the hardest thing I've ever done is teach a room of 7th graders. People underestimate what it takes.
Right.
But the transition into more of a financial services / investment landscape is really about just learning a different set of language. Oftentimes, when you're coming as an outsider from a space, you bring a lot more than people might think because you ask a different set of questions.
Absolutely.
And my thesis is, hey, if I can teach in a 7th grade classroom, I can easily build a portfolio that's going to have impact. And I think that's the confidence you have to lead with.
I have a question. So in regards to how a lot of the schools have changed the way that they're teaching over to using, the Chromebooks, the online versus actually reading and handwriting, how do you feel about that?
Spicy topic.
I agree. I agree so much because we didn't learn that way.
We did not. I think it makes sense given we're in a technologically connected world, right? It makes sense to have young people learn how to use all these tools.
Right.
Everyone, as you know from your program, everyone learns differently, and you want to give people as many options to do so. So I think tech is a great equalizer in that way. But at least in my experience, I was always like, provide the tech, let young people try things out, but also give them options to also see what else they can do, whether that's if you got to take a walk and think, do that. If you got to write it on the board, do that.
Right.
But after the pandemic, what I realized, because I was leading a school at that point in time, was the way that young people were receiving information had shifted. I became fascinated by places like, the Instagrams, the TikToks that were really sharing information in a new way. And a good friend of mine, SU alum, was like, hey, this youth safety and well-being team at TikTok is hiring, and you think you'd be interested? And I was like, what is youth safety and well-being, and why is a tech company doing it? And I got the job. Cool. And what it became was 3 years of asking some of the biggest questions of my life when it comes down to how do you both protect young people from things that are inappropriate or not optimal for them, while also thinking deeply about social media is how some young people come to find voice, come to find themselves, come to express themselves. So how do you strike that balance between expression and protection? A lot of the questions I had to answer were things like, how strict should we be on a type of content? Or at what point do we know or should we think about mental health potentially being impacted by certain types of content? And I knew that, and I had experience from that because I just watched 7th grade boys that would obsess over things online. And I was like, you should probably switch it up a little bit and do something else, go touch grass. So it was this nice full circle moment of I spent time in the field, went into a tech company, and then kind of brought the two together.
Right.
In a way that they're still doing amazing work. And I'm glad to see that a lot of the good work we did is still going on.
That's amazing. What's some words of wisdom or even guidance you would leave behind?
Oftentimes, what I think my career in life has taught me is that there are these arbitrary rules that exist. Like if you want to be a doctor, yes, there are very clear rules to becoming a doctor. But when it comes down to the work that I've had the privilege of doing, a lot of it is just taking bets on myself, applying for that thing, talking to that person, taking that risk, because if you don't take calculated risk, you never know what you can accomplish. So I would say the rules are all made up. Take bets on yourself.
Absolutely. I think it's funny you say that because a lot of times when my students ask me questions or have ideas, I always say the worst thing that's going to happen is you're going to hear no and you're going to go in another direction. I think that's all that we have for today. I really appreciate you taking the time to speak with me. It's been absolutely amazing. I've enjoyed listening to everything you said.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure. Bye, y'all.